just as I've been praying for to Goda himself, Scopper Gaban is turning out to be one of the coolest and most rad characters in all of One Piece, just saving everyone. With axes in hand, he's cut off the arm of Summers, and it's clear that he knows how to actually override and overcome that really stupid regeneration issue that the crew has been struggling with, leaving us with the big question: how? Was it thanks to Haki, or was it thanks to some other special power connected to his axes? I do think both are really likely, and I do want to go over everything related to Scopper Gaban today because I think I've unraveled something about him that might legitimately solve the full Elbaf arc and the way that the crew will eventually defeat Imu and the Gorosei. Also, can we just talk for a moment about how far this man has leaped to pull that thing off? Like, it literally looks like one of those Dragon Ball shots, you know, the way that his aura surrounded him as he leaped from the massive tree branch that he was on straight down to Summer's platform. He must be insanely fast. And in case you're curious, we can actually somewhat gauge just how far it actually was thanks to chapter 1147, which provided us with a handy little diagram of where everyone was in the current fight. Meaning that our man here leapt from a lower branch of the tree up here based on how the Great Eric, the giant warrior pirate ship, was falling out of the sky and lowering below the current main branch. Meaning that our old man Scopper has some serious hops, like those legs must be straight up pistons. Bellamy would be very, very jealous. But I do think we all know that the most important thing from this final chapter moment is the fact that a theory that you and I have been discussing for literal months at this point is finally confirmed to be true, because Scopper Gaban, the left hand of the Pirate King himself, not only knows Summers from the past, but he also has the power to overcome the Holy Knight's immortality regeneration. I mean, I actually just dropped a full video on it earlier this week, and I'm really happy that this chapter immediately confirmed what we're talking about here. And while we do know that he used Haki in the attack where he cut Summer's arm off, we see it right there, we also know that regular advanced Haki, even advanced Conqueror's Haki for all we know, is not enough to actually do anything about that powerful regeneration effect, as Luffy couldn't do anything against the Gorosei, and Jinbei was very handily defeated and unable to even touch Gunko in the last couple of chapters either. I do want to point out that we can't be fully certain of this due to the fact that I'm not even sure if Jinbei even ever actually landed a hit on Gunko, which I guess is kind of impressive in its own right. But regardless of that, I'm very confident saying that Scopper does in fact hold the secret weapon to defeating the Holy Knights, and I want to not only try and figure out what that is with you today, but also talk with you about how it could actually tie into his history with the Holy Knights in the past, his time on board of Roger's ship, and of course discuss his impact for the future of the series. Now, I do want to point out at this point, something that has me really excited for the next 2 or 3 chapters here is the fact that right now, I very shamelessly will say, this chapter really kind of feels like Oda wanted to pat me on the back a little bit and confirm some of my old pet theories here. Because even though most of my theories don't end up becoming true, even though they're a lot of fun to make and think about, let me tell you, a very good feeling to have a chapter full of confirmations about random stuff, and this one just had a bunch of those. And the one that really gets my blood pumping, like I drank 2 Red Bulls before this and went into gear second, which I actually did, you can probably tell, is the idea that Scopper and Summers have some history together confirmed. Now, what I'm personally really hoping for is an old man in love arc where Summers fell for Scopper Gaban, because come on, who wouldn't want to see that, and then had his heart tragically broken. I mean, imagine Summers thinking they would have a pirate and Holy Knight love affair, but in reality, it was just Summers being obsessed with Scopper like Gunko is with Brook. Okay, now, as fun as that would maybe be, I kind of doubt that that's true. Really, what does seem way more likely here is that because these two dudes seem to be really hellbent on their view of love, I'm kind of confident they crossed paths at the mythical island of God Valley, which is just the simplest explanation here, right? You know, the one that got wiped off the map after Roger Rocks and the entire Holy Knights battled it out there like 38 years ago. Should probably make a whole video break. We know a lot about God Valley at this point. Gotta make a video about that. Anyways, we got a lot of information about God Valley just during this arc, and then during the last arc, Egghead Island as well, and it kind of made me think that we have a lot more coming on this particular event. And all kind of this dynamic that Oda is crafting between Scopper and Summers, like their similarities and everything, makes me kind of think that within the next, I'm gonna say 3 to 5 chapters maybe, we might be getting yet another glimpse back at God Valley, and I really think that it's going to explore this sick and twisted view of romance that Summers very clearly once again depicts in this very chapter as well. Now, in my mind, there are a couple of things here that could have happened that made him so broken inside, and one of them could potentially center around Scopper Gaban. I mean, I've been kind of wondering why Summers is so cold-hearted and cruel when it comes to the idea of love and pain, and every time he talks about love in general, it's usually the negative connotation with pain, how it's manipulatable, and so on and so forth. So much so that it's kind of made me wonder if I've been kind of looking at this entire thing the wrong way, because I think it might actually tie back to his history with Scopper here. I mean, I kind of like to make the joke, oh, who hurt you, Summers, you know, as if he went through some big breakup or divorce that left him jaded, but what if it wasn't a loss of a relationship by choice, but by force? What if someone took his love away from him and that caused him to get really a little bit psychotic about things, is the most polite way I can put it. I mean, I think that would really help explain to us why he's so pissy when it comes to the topic of love, but it could also set up a very epic confrontation between him and the man who killed his former partner. So who do we think might have done it? Who killed or took away Summers' big love? Well, I think that could be none other than Scopper Gaban himself, of course. I mean, Scopper could have cut down a holy knight on God Valley, and little did he know that person was Summers' wife or fiance or something. But then again, knowing that Summers is a holy knight, I kind of feel it's maybe even more likely that Scopper just freed one of Summers' wives from her shackles and that got at Summers, or he just romanced her away from Summers, which would be my favorite option. I mean, we do know through Ginny that a lot of the holy knights and celestial dragons in general seem to have taken multiple wives to have their children, and I wouldn't be too shocked, honestly, if Scopper, the sensual love man, freed one of them on a Sanji-style crusade of righteousness. You kind of see, you know, how that could go. Mostly because I kind of feel like Oda isn't about to try and humanize any of the holy knights here. I mean, their morals are really messed up. Let's not beat around the bush here, man. I mean, kidnapping kids is a little bit too far, and then like almost forcing them to jump out, like, yeah, no. But I also think that there is more going on here, so we can actually circle back to it after I've gone over all the other Scopper stuff, which is way more important. I want to be clear here. I don't know if any of this is actually true or where Oda is actually going to go with it. It just feels like an arc where Oda would go down with these two because of their parallels. Their design, their love-based ideologies, and their clear history together make me think that Oda is setting up some sort of deeper connection between them, and this feels like an Oda writing play to me right there. And again, going back to the entire God Valley thing, I definitely think that with chapter 1145 showing us rocks, Elbaf being turned into a game like the slave hunt on God Valley now, and the fact that both the Holy Knights and Raja Pirates were key players there, this entire current face-off between an ex-Raja Pirate and a Holy Knight will reveal more of the action from that God Valley incident, I hope. And I actually think that it might even maybe foreshadow how the arc itself is gonna end at this point. Like, I can definitely imagine Scopper Gaban going, "Don't you dare turn my home island here into one of those twisted, sick games that you Holy Knights always throw. Elbaf will not be like God Valley," and then Summers hits a twisted evil laugh and goes, "I'll hurt everyone you've ever loved, Scopper Gaban." I don't know, man. I mean, I love both of these guys, like, in their own ways. They're pretty funny, and I'm really excited to see them both square off finally after 10 or 15 chapters of really waiting for this interaction to really kick into high gear. Honestly, I'm convinced that we haven't seen even close to the full power of the Holy Knights yet, and I'm really hoping that Scopper's fight with them will show us how strong they really are, which should theoretically happen now because this man has the power to negate the regeneration with some new form of hockey or whatever's going on here. Which I'm not sure if you agree, but I think the easiest explanation is that Scopper may have discovered or learned this while he was with the Raja Pirates, probably, right? The Mountain Eater here, which is definitely not an innuendo, by the way, was one of the strongest pirates in the world 30 years ago, and he's one of the few people who have sailed around the entire world and has learned the true history on Laugh Tale. We should not forget that he knows almost everything, and something in that journey just had to have taught him how to overcome this abyssal regeneration, or really whatever the heck it is that the Holy Knights and the Gorosei have really going on there. I hope you agree that it seems very likely that the regeneration seems to be directly tied to the Abyss and Emu, which we've learned is this demonic power that summons them and the Gorosei, so I do think it's very likely that maybe Scopper couldn't defeat them on God Valley due to this power, and maybe he knew that he'd have to figure out its secrets if they ever wanted to find Laugh Tale, or maybe even after, once it was clear that they needed to prepare for the arrival of the next Joy Boy. And I say that because it seems like the Holy Knights really only appear when big, and I mean really big threats to someone discovering the true history actually appear. I mean, them appearing to try and recruit Loki is a great example of this, as they do know the war is approaching and they need the giants on their side, at least according to Gunko. And Loki actually kind of soft confirmed this in chapter 1145, where he implied that the Holy Knights really go on the attack when someone who's close to conquering the world actually starts existing. And he tells Hyrule that if I'd gotten far enough to run into them when I was out there, I'd be king of the world right now, which base statement also, but also implies that the Holy Knights really only mobilize for fun sports like they did on God Valley, or when a world-conquering threat to the government hierarchy appears somewhere, like a Rox or a Roger-type figure. And all of this really leads me to believe that Scopper has interacted with them not just once, but maybe several times possibly, and that's how he either developed a way to cut them down, or how he found something that could help him do exactly that. And I'm sure you're curious, so let me share with you what I think here. The two most plausible ideas that I'm running with right now are the power of love, which I won't dwell on too much, and the new idea that his axes might actually be the stuff that hold his secrets here. Now, the power of love is kind of obvious in my mind. He is the minister of love. He's trying to save a loved one in the form of Colin. We know he's been compared to Sanji in multiple ways, who uses love as well for his passion, and it also just seems very likely that Scopper's gonna loudly yell something about love if Summers asks him how he did that. But it also seems like, based on his reaction to seeing Scopper Gaban, that he already knew that this man was capable of overriding the regeneration to begin with, which all points me to a new thought now. What does Scopper have that no one else seems to have in the story? And the very simple and maybe stupid sounding answer to this is Axis. Now, no, I'm not saying that the true power of every axe in One Piece is cutting down the Holy Knights, as much as I would love to see Luffy throw out an axe kick, or Zoro use 3 axe style to slice them up, or Captain Morgan coming back for his ultimate revenge. Now, I think the fact that Scopper uses his axes to cut off the arm might reaffirm something else that we've talked about a while ago too. And that's the idea that Elbaf's true fancy power element lies in the power of its weapons. You see, something that's always been a little bit puzzling to me is why Elbaf had to be the next arc here. I mean, Oda had decided we were entering the final big saga, or the end game after Wano, and he could have placed pretty much any island after the reveal of the Gorosei's true forms here, right? So why did it have to be Elbaf in his mind? And how does it tie into the fact that Scopper chose to specifically settle down here out of all possible places? Well, let's look at what is actually going on in this arc. There's a very cool looking giant sword jammed straight through the island. Loki has a mythical hammer named Ragnir that seems to summon island-sized lightning, and the Island of Warriors centers around a giant tree with the strongest wood on the entire planet, a very common and necessary component to forging new weapons. You probably see where I'm going with this, because all of this seems to tell me that the Atom Tree itself is very important to the core of this arc, because it's also been threatened to be burned down and is currently burning, pretty much that being its only weakness, right? And then we even got confirmation in this very chapter that the one thing that the Holy Knights really want to destroy is the Giants' heritage and history, and that's why they're targeting the tree and the library specifically. So I don't think it's at all that wild of a statement to say that the Atom Tree might legitimately hold the power to stop the Holy Knights' regeneration, and that Scopper's axes might be made out of the Atom's Tree wood, and that's how he's actually managing to cut through them. And I hope you like this idea, but I think there's actually an additional step here to this entire process, possibly similar to how black blades are produced as well, where a very special type of hockey and a special type of weapon of the Atom Tree are actually supposed to be combined to bypass the power of immortality. Think about it. We've been hearing for many years about just how powerful and rare the Atom Tree wood really is, like ever since, I think, Water 7 basically, and the fact that more than any other Straw Hat, Frankie out of all people is getting his own mini arc in Elbaf here, makes me kind of think that this is something very much worth unraveling a little bit more. Frankie is the first person to ever tell the crew about the Atom Tree's powers and actively build the Sunny out of Atom Tree wood, because the only other known ship built from its wood was the Oro Jackson, which was Gold D. Roger's ship. So it was only fitting that Luffy had a ship built the same way that the King of Pirates had his build, right? Well, I do think that it's actually super coincidental considering that Scopper was on that crew and now just happens to live on Elbaf. Now in this very arc, we also got confirmation that there are in fact other Atom trees somewhere spread around the One Piece planet, and my theorist senses kind of tell me that this could have been a hint at the tree of Ohara or maybe the Sunlight Tree Eve, and the knowledge tree of Ohara was burned down, and now the same thing is happening to the Atom tree as well. But you know what tree isn't getting burnt down? The Sunlight Tree Eve, currently located in the Holy Land. You know, guarded and safely kept by who? The Holy Knights. So if the wood of these trees is part of their main weakness, they wouldn't have to worry about that tree since it's right under their noses, no? Now if you're a regular viewer, you know that I've gone on for months at this point about Tree Peace and how the history of these trees could tie into the even deeper Void Century and First and Second Worlds respectively, but I won't talk about any of that right now, just like to remind you if you know what I mean. What I do want to focus on though is the idea that Scopper's reason for staying on Elbaf might have been to defend the Atom Tree because he knows it is the main secret power to defeating the Holy Knights. After all, its wood could have the power to negate the Abyss or whatever really is letting them regenerate, and by keeping it safe, he's not only securing a future for his family, but also the world as a whole. And I think that Scopper would know about it due to his travels with the Roger Pirates. He would definitely know about its history after living on the island for many years, and he is most likely familiar with how strong it is based on the fact that his ship was entirely made from its wood as well. And I definitely think that there is more here to unravel with the key players of this chapter and this arc in general. Because I don't know about you, but I've been really surprised that Robin and Frankie again are the most prominent Straw Hats actually getting stuff to happen in this arc. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, it kind of felt to me like Frankie should have been the focus on Egghead Island, and while yes, Saul and the Library of Ohara being on Elbaf does give Robin a good reason to have a key spot here, she's doing way more already than I would have ever expected. I personally thought that this arc was supposed to be about Usopp based on how the series kind of set everything up, so why is it suddenly focused on Frankie and Robin's side adventures instead? Well, when you really look at it through the lens of the Atom Tree, it does make a ton of sense. Because these two characters have been tied to the various trees the entire story, and it only makes a lot of sense that when we finally get to the Jewel Atom Tree, it's gonna be those two Straw Hats at the center of digging deeper into its roots, no pun intended. Again, we do know that it's the oldest and strongest tree alive, and thanks to that fact, it's a living storybook that tells the tale of the true history of the world, quite literally sometimes in the form of the mural here, because as it's literally etched into the bark as we saw in chapter 1138 right here. It has been the center of many theories, including a lot of mine lately, and while I do think I'd be pretty silly here to not point out that Robin and Frankie are the two characters who revealed everything to us. Because remember, Frankie was the one who saw the mural, but the voiceover of the Harley is presented by who? Robin. And I should also point out that smack dab in the center of it is the Atom Tree. I mean, so far I haven't really been able to figure out why it would be so important, but I think I finally figured it out. And hey, who would have thought that seeing my man Scopper Gaban cut off someone else's arm would send me down a spiral that led me to talking about magical trees? Well, I did. This tends to happen when I theorize, in all honesty, just go somewhere completely different, you know, compared to what I wanted to go actually, but that's also kind of the fun of it. And the Atom Tree being a part of the mural has been really interesting to me because of the fact that this tree is now being directly tied to the most ancient civilizations of the One Piece world. And it's not just this tree, but many of the other trees as well. I mean, Ohara, Marijua, these islands and places all center around these massive trees. Why? And actually completely forgot that this was told to us a long time ago, all the way back in chapter 431 by none other than Frankie. He said, far, far away, there is a war-torn island, and on that war-torn island is a tree. Whether the people of this island fight wars and rain cannonballs from the sky, or whether they all die off and their building turns to ashes, the tree always remains. It's a very special tree. It can't be chopped down. People gather around it and create entire nations. existence. There are only a few trees like that in existence, and that strongest tree in the world is the treasure tree Adam. This is how Frankie describes it to us in the Straw Hats, and I want to really focus on the line that people gather around it and create nations, something that I personally completely forgot about. And he doesn't say a nation, Elbaf, he says nations. Plural. Buildings turn to ruins. We've seen that by now. We've seen that people who lived on Elbaf or these other islands died in the form of that ancient laboratory Frankie showed us and the battles that took place in the mural, for instance. But the big tree is at the front and center of it, always there. And its wifey tree, the Eve tree, should be at the top of the Holy Land, considering where its roots are located right beneath it. We already basically know for a fact that these trees are capable of living for centuries or more likely thousands of years through the ancient history of the First and Second World, all the way until now, where civilizations are still being built around it. One of which is the strongest civilization in the world, the Holy Land, who the Straw Hats are currently fighting alongside Skopje Gaban and the warriors of Elbaf. It's basically a tree nation versus tree nation showdown right now in the story. And I think the reason for this could be that the Holy Knights and Emu want to take control over Elbaf so that they can finally eliminate their final loose threat, the thing that can override their regeneration, which is, once again, the Adam Tree. It all makes sense, I like to think, but Skopje Gaban can't let that happen, of course. Now, genuinely, I really think that there is something here between Skopje's role in the overall series being tied to the security and safety of the Adam Tree. I mean, I've theorized for a long time that Skopje is placed at the end of the Grand Line here in Elbaf because all of the other Raja pirates are placed in other key spots on the Grand Line, preparing for the final war and the arrival of the next Joy Boy. Shanks gave him the fruit and set him on his path. Krokus explained Laugh Tale to him. Rayleigh's role as a ship coder and mentor was to prepare Joy Boy for a big flood and also get him ready for, fighting in the New World and becoming a Yonko. But now, towards the end of the Grand Line, the biggest threat still remains. The Holy Knights and Emu, immortal beings and demons with the power to just regenerate. So I do think it makes sense that Skopje Gaban, the final key Raja pirate here, is the one responsible for helping Joy Boy surpass this immortality problem. And if it's not gonna be through some new power of hockey or the power of love, I think it's gonna be the power of the ancient Adam Tree itself. I mean, this could also help explain why Skopje seems to be so fond of Loki, because he's a strong defender who could defend the tree and this entire nation after he inevitably kicks the bucket. Because let's be real here, Skopje's already addressed his own old age in this very arc, saying that, the unfortunate reality of being married to a giant is that your wife and kid will outlive you by a very long shot. Luckily though, Joy Boy has now appeared, but he still needed to know someone could help train him and get him ready if he died before that happened. And that person, for all we know, could be Loki, who also seems to have some bigger understanding of what's going on based on this weird desire to burn the island to the ground. Which I gotta admit is counterproductive to what I've been saying, but that could also just be an aimless threat of his, honestly. He even explains to Hyrogin that he isn't actually evil the way people think he is, which just to me implies that his role is much more about developing Luffy than it is, fighting against him. But let's also think about the fact that since Luffy made it to Elbaf before Skopje kicked the bucket, we're gonna be fine, right? Well, not exactly, because these trees tend to burn at the hands of the world government quite often, I feel, and I think this still will be the case on Elbaf too. So either they will get their weapons and leave, or the power really isn't about the wood of the tree, and Skopje and Loki hold the secrets some other way. But really, regardless of what it turns out to be, it kind of feels like a new time skip is kind of necessary at this point, and Skopje, Loki, and Luffy are going to be spending some important training time together getting stronger. So if you want to know why that's the case and what's going to happen, you can check out that video right here, where I break down everything that is basically guaranteeing another time skip will happen after Elbaf. So go check that out. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and thanks to all our fantastic Patreons. Go check that out as well if you want to support the channel. All right, with that being said, I will see you in the next one.